Hi, my name is Rob Nguyen, and I'm a member of the English department at Lycoming College. Thanks so much to Dr. Phoebe Wagner and the folks at Williamsport's Sweetspire Coffee and Bakery for organizing and hosting the original event where I delivered this talk. All the faculty at Lycoming wear multiple hats across the work we do teaching and advising students, researching and writing, and doing administrative and committee work that help run and direct the school. Out of all that, the parts of my work that relate most to what I'll talk about today are the teaching and research I do on fictional depictions of office work and digital technologies. When I say fictional depictions, I mean not only fiction in a bookstore way, but also popular movies and television shows. These might seem at the outer borders of English work. Our discipline is probably most commonly associated with Shakespeare or other forms of literary high culture. But in addition to the fact that Shakespeare's plays were performed for and enjoyed by many audiences at both the top and bottom of the era's social ladder, the forms of popular culture we enjoy today, movies, television, social media, are widely consumed, and they mean very real and important things. I strongly believe that examining these closely help us understand our world better, and they help us understand ourselves, our thoughts, our beliefs, and our values. At a high level, that is why I do this job. At a low level, that's why I've spent the final weeks of the semester reading about Christmas movies. My talk this evening is titled Notes on Christmas Movies, Office, Technology, and Magic. I'll start by talking about what makes a Christmas movie, and then move on to discuss how office work and technologies are depicted in some of my favorite recent Christmas films, Elf and the more recent Apple Plus movie Spirited, starring Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. These films exemplify these themes, but they're also two of my favorites, so here I am talking about them. What's a Christmas movie? Here's the key to understanding what a Christmas movie is. It's an ancient traditional Welsh saying that goes, "It's not Christmas until I see Hans Gruber fall from Nakatomi Tower." For the uninitiated, here's some context. Sometime in the mid-2010s, people started debating online whether the 1988 Bruce Willis film Die Hard was a Christmas movie. What makes that debate engaging is that, at face value, Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. The internet loves engagement and heated arguments, so like the "what color is this dress" meme, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Debates raged on. Here's a capsule summary of Die Hard. Spoiler alert for anyone who has not seen this film that was released 37 years ago. NYPD cop John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, flies to Los Angeles on Christmas Eve to try and reconcile with his estranged wife. He arrives during the office Christmas party. The building is seized by terrorists, led by Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman. By the end of the movie, McClane's fought off the terrorists, Gruber's fallen off the building, and McClane reconciles with his wife. Now, when I chatted with Professor Wagner about how I wanted to talk about offices and Christmas movies, she said, "You've got to talk about Die Hard, right?" At the time, I said, well, it's set in an office building, I guess I'll mention it. Since doing some reading, I realized, well, actually, Die Hard is everything. Here's why. I won't die on the hill over whether Die Hard's a Christmas movie or not, but I would say the debate helps us understand what a Christmas movie is, and, a bonus, it exemplifies the public at large engaging in what would usually be a debate among academics. Whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie is a question of genre. What kind of work of culture is this? What do we expect out of the film? What's the film doing for people, regardless of what the makers of the film intended for it to do? In his own attempts to answer the Die Hard question, Nathan Skoll, a lecturer at the University of Pittsburgh, applied to Christmas movies Rick Altman's theory of film genres. As Skoll paraphrases it, genres are slippery. Our bookstores, and for those of a certain age, our video rental stores, might have sections of shelves with big printed labels: science fiction, action, drama. But there's no hard line that delineates for all time what is a sci-fi film, what's a Western, or what's an Oscar-worthy drama, because characteristics of these spill across these boundaries all the time. What matters more is how often different types of characteristics align with one another, and then how audiences and industries respond to the films. To classify, in this case, a Christmas movie, we can think about what we see or hear. Altman's term for this is the film's semantics. These include, in Skoll's words, a holiday setting, Christmas music, reference to presents, Santa Claus, Christmas trees, decorations, Christmas rituals and celebratory traditions. They may even include a reference to the birth of Jesus Christ. But you could have a movie that has these things on screen and on the speakers and not feel all that much like a Christmas movie. For that, we can think of a second category, which we can think of as the meaning of what we see or hear. Altman's term for this is the film's syntax. These include, in Scull's words, a combination of often hard-won family, emotional unity, physical family togetherness, concepts of the true meaning of Christmas entailing family and family togetherness. Arguably, most films traditionally considered Christmas movies do both of these things, and the framework includes a pragmatic aspect too. How do audiences and industries react to them? It's a Wonderful Life, How the Grinch Stole Christmas are all recirculated in television programming each year. The streaming equivalent may be movies appearing in a menu of holiday suggestions. But it seems Die Hard is cracked into that category as well, since Die Hard now tends to appear in television programming more often during the holiday season and shows up replayed in theaters in December more than any other time of the year, as Scull reports. So, to the extent that this programming decision is in response to people fighting over its genre category on the internet, congratulations to Die Hard as a Christmas movie proponents. You have been the change you wanted to see in the world. The point here isn't about determining what's in or what's not, and from what I could see in a library search, enough ink has been spilled in websites and magazines on this specific topic. But what I think matters most is this sense of what Christmas movies look like and how they're expected to make us feel. There's a consistent core meaning to most Christmas movies. Amidst this holiday backdrop, often exciting but materialistic and potentially overwhelming, a character transforms to recognize the value of family, the true meaning of Christmas. The template for this is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, featuring the haunting and the redemption of Ebenezer Scrooge, and that brings us to my next note on Christmas movies and work. In his essay Christmas and the Movies, Frames of Mind, John Mundy argues that many Christmas movies follow Scrooge's template, in which characters may be caught up in the material interests or even the hustle and bustle of the holiday itself, but are changed or illuminated at Christmas due to something special about this season. Like Scrooge, characters may learn to set aside their pursuit of wealth and actually relax for a change, take some time off of work. But the funny thing is, some of my favorite Christmas movies have a lot to do with work. In some cases, the protagonists happen to be working on Christmas, and some outside force disrupts what would be the usual conduct of their jobs. In another of my favorites, an old Ghostbusters cartoon, the Ghostbusters are thrown back in time to the Victorian period. They see 3 ghosts that have been haranguing this old man who just wants to have a cozy night in, and they capture the ghosts. The old man is, of course, Scrooge, and the Ghostbusters have captured the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come. There's a whole plot that ensues from where they have to set things right and let the ghosts haunt Scrooge. The Ghostbusters aren't technically on the clock during that episode. I don't know if you can just barge into someone's room, capture ghosts, and expect them to pay you. But even thrown out of their normal time period and with no client, there they are on Christmas Eve working anyway. In Netflix's A Very Merry Christmas, Murray's filming a Christmas special on Christmas Eve when a snowstorm cuts the power, and the special we see ends up being a bunch of musical numbers with other persons snowed into the hotel. In other cases, the very persons enforcing this message of stop working and take a break are themselves working, like a lot. Early in Elf, on Christmas morning, Santa congratulates his elves on a job well done and tells them that tomorrow they'll start preparing for next Christmas. All the elves enthusiastically cheer this announcement. They've just finished working for a whole year, and they are so excited to do it again. There's an argument to be made about elf labor and how such stories ideologically obfuscate the means of production. And for that, you can read Adam Satella's An Anti-Neoliberal Christmas in the Journal of Popular Culture. Though I do think there's something quite tongue-in-cheek about this particular depiction in Elf. Spirited, on the other hand, draws our attention to work as work through story elements and production design, the latter of which is far more realistic than the cartoonish North Pole of Elf. A brief summary. Will Ferrell plays the ghost of Christmas Present. He and his team of spirits haunt a different terrible person every year, redeeming that humbug into a good person whose good efforts are expected to ripple outwards through the world. The Ripple idea is their addition to the Scrooge tale, perhaps their justification for spending a tremendous amount of resource working on just one person per year. Early in the film, the spiritual nature of Farrell and his fellow ghost is playfully undercut. An opening scene of the ghost of Christmas yet to come pointing to a tombstone and terrifying the hauntee into redemption is followed by Farrell distributing takeout coffees to his team. Each year's hauntee is referred to as a perp, short for perpetrator. A spirit from HR reminds Farrell that he may wish to consider taking his retirement package. After the ghost of Christmas past succumbs to the charms of the perp played by Ryan Reynolds, hey, who wouldn't? To avoid things getting awkward, she asks Farrell to, quote, cover her shift. Like the elves, the spirits are basically working forever, but by incorporating these words and conventions that might be familiar to us from our own day-to-day lives, the work starts to feel more relatable, and the conversion of Reynolds' character feels less than the foregone conclusion our decades of Christmas movie experience might lead us to believe. You can't just show people their past and point to tombstones. The work of converting an unredeemable person who ardently does not want to change is, in fact, work. The Spirit's headquarters is a large, multi-level, open-plan space. On the top level, there are galleries including a conference room where what I think of as the C-suite team meets, Ghosts of Christmas, present, past, and future, led by their boss, Marley, and then a large ground floor where much of the administrative work happens. They use headsets, but there are few computers. Instead, we see file cabinets, folders, and office busyness marked by physical activity. There's something very practical to this from a cinematic perspective. The quaintness of it all makes their office work look at least interesting. When I see someone on screen in an office at a computer, I think inactivity and boredom because that's what the language of film has coded these activities for me as. See, for example, Office Space and The Office. The layout in Spirited's office is also helpful for big musical numbers. Farrell follows Marley up and down around the balcony, and in the credits there's a whole number with a tap routine down in the center that's here in this image flooded with water because it's a musical. You can do whatever you want. But it also evokes a very traditional, old-school workplace. In Sheila Liming's book Office, she recounts how the late 19th, early 20th century office typically included galleries above where executives would work and a large open floor of workers below. The galleries provided executives with opportunities to surveil or gawk at their workers, and while some of the styles changed over time, the basic layout remained fairly static for some time. An actual spoiler, Farrell's character is actually Scrooge, who was redeemed years ago, and now as the ghost of Christmas present, haunts others who, like him, had lost their way. So while he had spent his mortal life working too much and ignoring personal family connections, as a spirit, he's done something similar, albeit for a much loftier cause. Maybe the point here is that Christmas or the afterlife doesn't have to be a break from work to make it enjoyable. Maybe the message is that the right kind of work could also be joyful. Christmas movies suggest to us that when it comes to technology, both on the visual effects side and within the diegetic world of the stories themselves, like the delivery of Santa's presents in A Christmas Story, it's best to keep things simple. If you're working on the cutting edge of visual effects, there are some things that are bound to look dated. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come in A Muppet Christmas Carol disappears in animated rainbow sparkles that look dated by current standards, although the creepy doll of Christmas Past, pictured on the upper right here, does remain absolutely creepy. When conceptualizing Elf, now firmly in the canon of holiday classics, Jon Favreau, the director, wanted to give the film an old-school feeling, what he describes in a behind-the-scenes featurette as a Frank Capra feel, referencing the director of It's a Wonderful Life. Favreau eschewed high-tech visual effects for practical ones, practical meaning something that's done on the set and captured live on camera in the moment, not digitally added later. In the North Pole scenes, like in Santa's workshop pictured at the bottom here, Farrell is positioned closer to the camera than the other actors, making him look bigger than the rest of them. A similar technique was used by director Peter Jackson in a number of shots in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which was filmed around the same time as Elf. To populate the North Pole, Favreau turned to animated characters in the style of the classic film Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which, by the way, if you haven't seen it, is a super trippy film. Rather than turning to film technologies of the present, Favreau turned to the past, and in doing so, his movie, 1, remains somewhat future-proofed. It's less apt to look dated, even now, decades later. And 2, creates this feeling of nostalgia, which is a characteristic of Christmas films. When it comes to the delivery of Santa's presents, a number of these films suggest that tech, as in the technologies of our human world, ought to give way to the magic of Christmas. In Noel, Bill Hader's character refuses to step into the role of Santa Claus as is expected of him, and Gabriel, played by Billy Eichner, takes the job instead. Gabriel uses an algorithm to determine just how many nice kids actually exist in the world. His calculations bring it to apparently just over 2,000. And his North Pole work area is dystopian technospace of monitors and technologies imagined to make the delivery of gifts more efficient, but in practice only lead to failure. In Elf, Santa's sleigh had traditionally been run on Christmas spirit, a metric displayed by the Clausometer dial on the sleigh's dashboard here on the left. But as Papa Elf points out, there isn't enough Christmas spirit in the world anymore. He describes the lack of belief in Santa Claus as a real quote-unquote energy crisis, evoking modern discourse about limited, non-renewable resources. Papa Elf's solution had been to attach a jet engine to the base of the sleigh to keep it aloft. To my eyes, there is still something a bit magical about this engine. I don't see a fuel reservoir built into the sleigh or wings to generate proper lift, but it's nonetheless a very identifiable human world technology affixed to the sleigh. After the engine gets knocked off, the sleigh is ultimately able to fly again because of all the people Will Ferrell's brother and his co-worker are able to convince that Santa Claus still exists. The final burst of power is given by James Caan singing Santa Claus is Coming to Town, lifting the sleigh up so it can ascend into New York City's skyline. Tech is out, Christmas magic is in. While reading up on these films, one thing that struck me is this recurring idea that there's something magical about Christmas that makes these characters' changes possible. In Love Actually, when The Walking Dead's Andrew Lincoln confesses his love to Keira Knightley, one of the cards says, "Because it's Christmas," and the other, on Christmas you tell the truth. Which doesn't necessarily mean you should confess to being in love with your best friend's wife, but it does suggest something special about this particular time. And the why behind that isn't all necessarily clear. There's a plot in Netflix's Christmas Chronicles in which Santa, played by Kurt Russell, needs the main characters to help him get his lost hat, because without his hat, he can't fly. Strictly speaking, you can think of a technology as anything outside of our physical selves that we use to do things. In this case, Santa's hat makes Santa fly. It's his technology of sorts. And by the end of the film, after the kids have helped him get his hat, and that journey has led the humbug older brother to redeem himself and they've saved Christmas, Santa Claus ascends into the air on his own, sans hat, and tells the incredulous kids, "Well, I am Santa Claus." Maybe another meaning or theme of Christmas movies is this stripping away of technologies that don't help us, so that we might better recognize the magic of the season or the magic of Santa Claus that marks this time. To close, I want to think back to Die Hard a bit, and back to the actual ways that we watch Christmas movies. The meme goes, "It's not Christmas until I see Hans Gruber fall from Nakatomi Tower." It's a joke, but if we read these lines closely, there's a complex sequence at work here. Christmas comes every year, but for me, the viewer, it doesn't start until I see Hans Gruber fall. How frequently is Hans falling on my screen? At least once per year, again and again. This is how we, or at least many of us, watch Christmas movies. Christmas aside, think of your favorite movie and think of how many times you've seen it in the past 10 years. For me, my go-to is Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Favorite movie. I've probably seen it 3, maybe 4 times in the last 10 years. But when I think of Christmas movies, the numbers skyrocket. For example, how many times have I seen Love Actually? That's easy. How many years are there between 2003 and 2025? That's how many times. Probably skipped a few years, probably made up for it by watching it in other years multiple times. Elf? Spirited? Much of the same. And part of the reason all of these examples are on the tip of my tongue are because I get reminded to watch Christmas movies every year. around the same time, simply because the same holiday is coming around. It's hard for me to think of other genres of movies that work quite in this way. So as you watch your favorites, as here in December, we close out what Ben Folds in his album Slayer called, quote, "this last weird trip round the sun," I encourage you to think about what you see or hear in these movies, to think about what they mean, and to talk about that with other people. In doing that, you might find your own Christmas magic.